I got a watch. My parents gave me a watch. It was a Casio watch. It wasn't one of those calculator ones. You guys remember those? They had the little tiny buttons. Those were a little too expensive. So I got a regular watch, but it had a stopwatch on it. And I loved, as a 9-year-old, I would go around timing everything, right? Like, how long is it gonna take me to eat this sandwich? Or how long is this meeting gonna last? I would time it. So my mom used to go to a park near our house and walk laps around. There's a half-mile paved trail around this park. She would go walking there. Sometimes I would go with her and I would sit, I would go play the playground while she was walking. But one day I had an idea with my little Casio watch. I was gonna time myself to run a mile, 2 laps around this park. So I strapped on my high-top basketball shoes and I went out and ran a mile, fast as I could. About died, but I got a pretty good time. I ran without stopping the whole time, which I was excited about. But I thought I could do better. So the next week, I went out there and did it again. And my time, I shaved about 20 seconds off my time. And I was pretty stoked. And so the next week I went again and again. And this was kind of the start of a lifelong addiction to running for me. When I got to high school, I showed up at the coach's office. He was the track coach, was an art teacher. So I went into his art room and I said, I'm a runner. I would love to be on the track team and I want to do the mile. And I said, how fast do I have to run the mile to get a college scholarship? So my parents didn't graduate from college, and I knew they weren't going to have enough money to send me to college, right? So I had to get a scholarship in something, right? So I asked the track coach, and he said, you know, your best bet is to make it to the state championship meet. That's where all the college coaches are, and you'll get noticed there if you go there and you run well there. So I said, okay. So my big goal became making it to state. The state championship meet, we called it state, right? Everybody was so excited to go to state. We got to my junior year. I'd never made it to state, but some of my teammates had, and they had so much fun. There was like this big party they would do, and I just really, really wanted that. To qualify for state, though, you have to have a top 3 finish in the regional qualifier meet. So that year, I came down the home stretch of the 4th and final lap of the mile run. And I started counting bodies. So I was like 1, 2, you get tired when you're running. Your mind gets a little foggy. And so I was like, I did a double take and I realized I'm in 3rd place. And this is actually gonna happen, right? I'm gonna go to state. So I crossed the finish line and I heard a race official say, blue before green. And I was like, what is this guy talking about? But I looked to my right and I see a guy in a blue jersey. I'd never seen this guy in my life, certainly not during the race, but apparently he'd kind of done one of these to me right at the finish line, right? It reminded me of Jerry Seinfeld. He says, you know, track and field, everything is about inches, right? So it's like 1st place, 2nd place, dead last. Like, greatest guy in the world, never heard of him, right? So this guy does one of these to me, and he takes away my precious 3rd place finish, and I finish in 4th place, 1 spot out of qualifying for state. I was super bummed about it, but luckily I had the 800 meters. I was also competing in that, and as well as a relay, right? So my strategy in the 800 meters was just to go out, do my best, and hope for a top 3 finish. So here's a picture of me finishing the 800 meters in freaking 4th place. I was like, how is this happening, right? This one wasn't quite so close. But the only consolation I had was, okay, I've got the relay, right? This relay, there were only 7 teams that made the final for this relay, and we had a pretty good team. So going to state in a relay is not as good as going on your own, but at this point, I'll take it. So we get to the starting line, and the guy, our first runner, he gets the baton in his hand, and right when the gun's about to go off, he gets a really good start right before the gun. So the gun goes off a couple times. They pull everybody back to the starting line, and they say, lane three, you're disqualified. like, that was it. I realized no state track meet for me. And it took me a while to kind of let that sink in. At first I was like, well, just he false started. I didn't false start, so I should be able to still go. Doesn't work that way. So I remember I went outside the stadium and I actually laid down in the grass. And I looked up at the clouds. And the clouds, there's all these shapes in the clouds. I was just trying to process what had just happened. This feeling of having something within my grasp and just slowly letting it slip away or having it pry it out of my hand, I guess, was one of the worst feelings I had ever felt. I decided I never want to have that feeling again. So I figured I had two options. I could quit track and field, which I thought about doing, or I could double down, right? I could never miss a practice. I could go at all the early morning optional weight room practices, and I could really go all in so the next year things would be different. So the next day, my coach sees me in the hallway, and he gets to tell that I was still super bummed about this epic failure of mine. And he comes up to me, and I was kind of glad that he was going to come and comfort me a little bit. I figured he was going to say something like, fourth place isn't all that bad, or proud of you for running your best, or running hard, or whatever. But he didn't say any of that. Instead, he asked me a question. He says, "Parker, why were you racing for third place?" I was like, "Third? Racing for what? I wasn't racing for third. But it at first I was kind of offended, and then I was a little defensive about it, but I realized I never actually believed that I could win any of those races. I was selling myself short of what I knew that I could accomplish. Now, again, there's nothing wrong with third place. If you're at the Olympics and you get a bronze medal, that would be fantastic, right? But if you have the ability to do something more and you're racing for third, what I say is this is the opposite of fearless. So too often in our lives and in our careers, we end up racing for third without even realizing it. We find ourselves kind of cruising along, doing what we think is our best, but we don't actually believe that we can win. And even if we think we may win, a lot of times we haven't formed a plan to do so. In her book, Rise, Patty Azzarello says that to do great things at work, we don't need to pull crazy hours or throw our lives completely out of balance. In fact, we shouldn't. Instead, she says we need to rise above the work. We need to find better ways to accomplish the results that we want. This is one of Sharon's book club books, and I don't know how many of you can keep up with Sharon's 50 books a month or whatever she does.
100 a year.
How many?
100 a year.
100 a year, yeah. This is one that I got, so I'm not quite at 100 a year, but this one was fantastic, and I'm glad I read this one because the author, she goes through specific detail about how to rise above the work. For example, she says, do the job that needs doing, not the one that was given to you. She also talks about fearless. She says, in your current role, there are opportunities for bigger wins. With fearlessness and imagination, you can reshape your job into that bigger and better job that needs doing. Sheila Glaser often talks about the simple, hard questions. To me, what my coach asked me that day was the perfect example of a simple, hard question. Why were you racing for third place? Racing for third. My coach helped me realize that racing for third was not what I was supposed to be doing. It was not what I was capable of doing. Like all good coaches do, he helped me see things from an entirely different perspective and helped me understand what I was capable of. So that year, I went all in. On Christmas Day, there was 6 inches of snow outside, and I went running. Every day, I executed the plan that my coach set out for me to do. And when regionals came along, I raced to win. I won the 800 meters, and I qualified for state in all 3 races. And because I was able to make it to state, I ran times that were fast enough, just barely fast enough, to get noticed by one of the track coaches and get a scholarship offer, one scholarship offer. And again, I'm not sure what I would have done without the scholarship, but because of that scholarship, I was able to get my bachelor's and master's degrees paid for, and I was able to go to work for some great companies. And today, I have the honor of working at one of the greatest companies in the world with all of you guys. So I want to leave you with 3 things that I learned through this that I think are important, not just for running, but for a lot of different things in our lives. Number 1, believe. Believe you're capable of doing more. Race to win. I love this picture of Steph Curry. Not a lot of people believe that this skinny kid with a baby face from some college that nobody ever heard of would make it in the NBA. But he believed. I mean, look at his face. He believed. He ended up making it to the NBA, but not only that, he became the first ever unanimous MVP in the history of the NBA. Racing to win means something different to each of us. Just don't let your lack of confidence stop you from going after what you want. Number 2 is make a plan, right? Again, hope is not a strategy. So be honest with yourself about what it's going to take to win. For me, it was never missing a practice. It was going to all those early morning weight room sessions. The other thing I had to do was I had to give up the basketball team. Now, my track coach for a while had been trying to get me to focus on track and do indoor track during that winter season instead of basketball. And I resisted because I love basketball. But the sacrifice paid off for me. Plus, I wasn't that good at basketball anyway. I thought it was. And the third one is execute, right? Surprisingly, this is not all that hard. It's not as hard as the other 2, right? Because once you believe and you realize you understand what you're capable of doing, and then you have a plan to go out and do it, then all you gotta do is show up at the starting line and just go out and do what you need to do. Do what you know how to do, and just follow that plan, right? Be fearless and get uncomfortable in your job, right? Go after that bigger and better job, right? Or even within your own current job, find those bigger wins. Each of us, every person in this room, has done amazing things in their lifetime. If you didn't, you wouldn't be here. And each of us has potential to do some even more great things, right? If we believe, figure out what we're capable of, if we make a plan and we go out and do it, we'll unlock that potential. And when we race to win, there is no stopping us. There's no limit to what we'll be able to accomplish.